Chapter 11. The Final Battle of the Disturbance. 1. 5th Late Fire Moon, September, 2:30 a.m. The roaring flames didn't give off any heat. They were like illusions. The adventurers at the head of the line exchanged glances with their teammates before mustering the courage to take a step into the towering wall of fire. The support unit from the shrines had cast a defensive spell on them, which reduced fire damage, so the reason they held their breath must have been because they were worried about their lungs burning. "We told them this fire wouldn't hurt them, though." Lachius grumbled in her head as she watched over them from the rear. Then she considered the firewall. "It doesn't do any harm, so it's fine," was too simplistic a way of thinking. If the demon's aim wasn't to cause damage, then they needed to figure out what effects it did have and why it was made. Times like this, when all the thinking in the world doesn't get you an answer, it's better to just give up. Was it Evil Eye who was saying I should use my head for more important things? Or my uncle? They passed through the magic fire like a mere mirage. The flames had no heat, nor did they present any resistance. Lachius scanned the adventurers walking with tense looks on their faces. The plan was to form a line, but inside the city, it was virtually impossible to make a neat line. So with 4 orichalcum ranked teams as linchpins, all the adventurers split into 4 groups. To someone with a bird's eye view, it would have looked like 4 amoebas spreading out. As long as the orichalcum adventurers were acting as anchors, they had to be good models for the others. But even they're nervous. Really, she would have liked them to conceal their fear and inspire courage in the other adventurers. I guess I have to be the one to take the lead? If she stood at the head of the line, morale would probably improve too. But right now, she didn't have any friends she could rely on by her side. She may have been adamantite rank, but that didn't mean a single rose could equal an entire orichalcum team. That was why she'd asked them to serve as the vanguard. It would probably bother them if the one who asked them to go was to butt in. But at some point I should probably get out there and lead. Lachius concluded and crossed through the wall of flames. A silent world stretched out before them. Apart from the fact that some buildings had collapsed and there was no sign of any people, the city streets were just the same as before.
"Where did the residents go? It doesn't smell like blood. Are they holed up in their houses?" "That can't be. Look, the doors are kicked in. They must have been taken somewhere."
"There might be demons lurking in the empty houses. Should we go through each one? It'll take a while."
"We should play it safe and contact Lachius for orders." "Then I'll do that right away."
"That won't be necessary." The consulting adventurers turned around, drawn by the voice from behind. They must have been surprised to see Lachius reach the head of the line with perfect timing, and their eyes widened. "The iron and copper adventurers will stay behind to search the houses, and please have 1 mithril team stay to supervise them. Everyone else should keep spreading out in advance. Any objections?" They shook their heads. "Then please proceed." Lachius joined the orichalcum adventurers and advanced along the street. It was eerily quiet, to the point where one would never guess people had been living there until a few hours previously.
"By the way, I wonder if Mr. Momon is all right."
Considering they were leaving everything up to him, she understood their concern. "I'm sure he's fine. Evil Eye said he's even stronger than her. The only problem is the enemy mastermind, Yoldabaoth, who might be his equal. I wonder how tough that demon really is." The expression of all the adventurers in earshot grew dark. "Oh, sorry. Don't worry. We just have to do what we can. That's good enough."
"Yes, that's right. As adventurers, it's a bit frustrating. But let's console ourselves knowing that everyone would leverage their strengths. Okay, everybody, let's do this."
"Right. Let's go." Lachius walked out front with the orichalcum rank adventurers. In one hand, she gripped a monic sword Kilinarum, said to have been cut from the night sky. The blade twinkled like the stars. They hadn't walked very far when they heard the faint sound of explosions in the distance. The lower-ranking adventurers jumped, and the middle-ranking ones started preparing themselves for action. The high-ranking ones vigilantly scanned the area. The most elite among them stared ahead. As everyone reacted in their various ways, Lacus also turned a penetrating glare forward.
I guess that group is seeing some action, huh?
It didn't seem like the squad Tina was in.
As long as we're advancing at the same pace, we should be expecting an intercepting party soon, too.
What about from above?
We have communications personnel up there as planned, but we didn't spare any who could attack.
That's fine. Lots of demons can fly. It'd be bad if they flew into the city, so it's better for us to advance along the ground to draw their attention.
So we're going ahead with the original plan for now?
Yes. Hey, did you hear that? She asked an arcane caster. The caster replied,
With no visual confirmation, I'm not sure, but it sounds like a hellhound. Their special ability is fire breath, probably around difficult 15.
Difficulty? By the way, what do you reckon the difficulty rating are for Yaldabaoth and that bugmaid? Lacus wondered what to do. If she replied honestly, it would probably do a heavy number on their morale. But if she gave them misinformation, and they mistakenly assumed they could face these enemies head-on, that would be a problem too. After much indecision, she finally gave a straight answer. 150. Huh? All the adventurers in hearing range had the same look on their faces. That's my guess for the bugmaid's minimum rating. 150. Yaldabaoth would have to be over 200. What? Everyone, besides Lacus, was left speechless. Of course they were. The difficulty rating of monsters that elite Orichalcum adventurers usually fought was already around 80. People said they could somehow deal with monsters up to 15 points higher than that, but doubling that was just a joke. Not only that, but... Wait a minute! So Mr. Momon is going up against difficulty 200? That's right. That's why we'd only be in the way. There's no point even talking about that realm. 200? You must be kidding! Are all adamantite rank adventurers that strong? Huh. The best we could do is probably 90. Then there's no way we can win this! Lacus averted her eyes from the gasping adventurers. She wasn't lying, but it wasn't the truth either. She could manage only around 90, but Evil Eye could handle over 150. That was how Lacus had estimated the ratings for the bugmaid and Yaldabaoth. That power was why Evil Eye wasn't part of the perimeter defense. She'd gone into a special resting period in order to swiftly recoup her magical energy. Once recovered, she would accompany Momon to Yaldabaoth's location and support him so he could fight the demon one-on-one. They anticipated the reappearance of the bugmaid, so it had been decided that Evil Eye would fight her. As Lacus considered all this, she sensed the atmosphere around her worsening. Their will to fight had bottomed out to the point where she could even hear some saying it would be better to abandon the capital and make a run for it. It was just as she'd expected. Anyone would feel that way. Even Lacus had her own doubts when she originally heard the details from Evil Eye. You heard what Evil Eye said, right? Momon fought Yaldabaoth on equal or better footing. That's why Momon's handling the demon, and we're working to turn things even slightly to his advantage. Even if we leave Yaldabaoth up to Momon, what if the bugmaid shows up? The Blue Roses will fight her. Evil Eye has a special item that will let her switch places with us. She has a way to gain the upper hand against the bugmaid, so she can shake off the ability gap and secure victory. Everyone oohed and awed, and their morale rose to its previous level. Perfect timing. From up ahead came the sounds of beast howls and running feet. Here they come! Now we form the line! When you go down a side street, make sure the ones with the higher ranking plates go first. I'll take this one! The beasts came galloping down the road. They resembled large dogs, but their eyes were filled with nightmarish evil, and instead of spit, they drooled fire. Hellhounds, 15 of them. Lacus stood in their way, readying demonic sword Kilinarum and a two-handed hold. "Don't underestimate me, demon scum!" With a prayer to the god of water, Lacus cut down the hellhounds, leaping at her in a single stroke of her sword. Skillfully wielding floating swords, which doubled as her shield, she evaded the hounds springing toward her from the side. The one snapping at her ankles she kicked away. 6 of the hellhounds beset Lacus alone. The others scattered to other adventurers in the area. Weaker adventurers faced a single hound each. Their stronger peers took on more, and the number of monsters steadily decreased. By the time Lacus had finished killing her 6, the battles in the area had been settled. "Anyone hurt?"
We're okay, Miss Lacus.
It couldn't be said that they'd all made it through unscathed, but no one had suffered any serious injuries. They were off on the right foot, considering they needed to conserve magical energy. "We're advancing. For right now. We're pushing up about 50 yards. Pass it down the line." Like an echo in the mountains, she heard the words, "Advancing 50 yards," repeating on all sides. Lacus brandished her sword and stepped forward to take point. 5th late fire moon, September, 2:41 a.m. 3 people jogged down the deserted streets, selecting particularly dark, narrow ones. It was Climb, Brain, and the former Orichalcum rank thief who had joined them during the raid on Zero's base. Marquis Raven's house soldiers were all patrolling the city, along with Prince Zanak. If any demons appeared outside the siege perimeter, they would subdue them. According to Marquis Raven, the reason he'd lent them such a powerful man was that the thief had requested to participate himself. Apparently, he'd volunteered in order to return the favor for the treatment of his wounds, as well when Climb caught him after taking a hit from Zero. There was most likely one other reason. Marquis Raven probably wanted Renair to feel indebted to him. Since the thief had led them on routes where they wouldn't encounter demons, they hadn't met a single enemy. Would they have made it this far without him? They were confident they could handle demons that relied on strength and speed, but the moment magic or special powers came into play, the chances grew slim. For a party makeup that depended on skill for both attacking and defending, handling any non-physical combat would be nearly impossible. Only those with a death wish would willingly undertake this mission. But the thief had probably agreed to participate precisely because he knew, although they spent only a short time together, that Climb and Brain lacked those critical skills. Feeling grateful, Brain continued moving in a half-crouch, with quick steps. The atmosphere of the surrounding buildings gradually began to change, and the number of large non-residences increased. Their destination was extremely close.
So why are we headed to the warehouse district?
The thief asked as he glanced around the area. Climb replied, "Princess Renair said if you wanted to collect a lot of prisoners together, you'd need a place big enough to imprison them all. Rather than gathering them in a square, it would make more sense to lock them in multiple warehouses and split up families."
I see. By scattering families, the members can be used against one another as hostages. Then I guess we have to hurry. Well, I'll take a roundabout way and look for the safest route I can find.
Thanks. They had to worry about what happened after they found the people, too. Considering the return trip, they knew finding a safe route ahead of time was a must. It was especially important to find a good route, because there would probably be a whole crowd of people to take with them. But Brain wondered how long their good luck would hold out. This mission really was essentially an order for Climb to go die. If the enemy had rounded up commoners, they had to have a reason for it, so there would definitely be someone keeping watch. From what he'd heard, the enemy mastermind, Yaldabaoth, could slay an adamantite rank adventurer in one blow. The subordinate of such a monster would by no means be weak. He glanced at Climb, who was running next to him. The boy, who wore pure white armor to inform people of his connection to the princess, was caressing his gauntlet.
No, he's caressing the ring on his finger beneath it.
Brain knew. It was an accessory he'd gotten from Gazov. Apparently, Gazef had received it from an old woman in former Blue Rose, and it was an ultra-rare item said to be created by ancient magic. He'd heard briefly that it allowed warriors to break through the limits of their strength.
Survive, and return it to me.
Brain remembered Gazef's face as he told the boy that. He hadn't been wearing any particular expression. No anger, no sadness, no pity. Because he knew that warriors with a master worth serving sometimes had to go to battles that might as well have been death sentences. But he had the feeling that Gazef, lending such a valuable ring, giving the most support he could offer, spoke to his state of mind. Running to join the thief up ahead after being waved on, Brain sensed a presence and looked up. He ran his eyes along the edge of the buildings and received a shock so great he thought his heart would stop. There was, he guessed from the figure's height and build, a little girl, blonde hair fluttering behind her, on the edge of the roof of one of the warehouses. She wore a very expensive-looking dress of white material embroidered with silver. High heels that sparkled like crystals peeked out from its hem. In addition, she was wearing a necklace and earrings, all sorts of elegant accessories. She looked like the daughter of a great noble or a noblewoman from somewhere. Even discounting the strangeness of the white mask covering her face, her figure was remarkably mysterious, sparkling ominously in the light of the curtain of fire behind them. Her ostentatious appearance, combined with her faint presence, made her seem to have slipped out of some spirit world. Her outfit, the color of her hair, and the way she talked weren't the same at all. If the girl back then was born of darkness, this one had come floating down from the moon. Still, this had to be the same one. The figure burned into Brain's memory overlapped with the one before his eyes. He was sure of it. He knew the face beneath that girl's mask was that of the monster, Shaltir Bloodfallen. She didn't seem to have noticed them, but with that monster, distance meant nothing because the moment she detected them, they would be killed instantly. But could they leave without drawing her attention? It didn't seem remotely possible. Before he knew it, it felt like walking on thin ice, and it was cracking. When he worried that she might sense even his slightest tremble, a sickly cold sweat oozed from every pore in his body. Climb and the thief were about to say something, but he stopped them by putting a finger to his lips. They must have inferred something from how pale his face was. They both froze and concealed their presence.
What should we do? What would be best? We will absolutely die if we fight that thing. We can't run away even if we want to. The only way I managed to back then was because of the secret passageway. It'll be impossible in a place like this. But why is she here? Don't tell me she's been looking for me.
Having thought as much, Brain smiled. There was only one answer.
Climb. I'll buy time. You go.
He turned to the thief and bobbed his head.
Take care of him.
He didn't wait for them to argue. He jumped, grabbed a hold of the building, and pulled himself up. He didn't have the climbing skills of a thief, but it was no trouble to clamber up 2 stories by the strength of his warrior arms. When he reached the roof, Shaltir was still in the same spot. Brain's heart lurched. He was scared, so scared he couldn't handle it. The memories of desperately fleeing last time came back to him. Still, for some weird reason, he had the courage to face her. "What can I do for you?" Her icy voice, a little different since it was coming from behind the mask, reached Brain's ears.
She doesn't recognize me. Why not? Could she be acting? I guess I should act like I'm dealing with someone else first and see how she reacts.
Having made that decision, he said,
I saw a strange woman up on the roof. What are you guys doing in the capital?
Why should I have to tell you? Or rather, what is a human even doing here? Are you the only one who made it this far?
His heart was racing. He wanted to know how far away the others had gotten, but he couldn't look. He raised his voice a bit while evading her question.
We're looking for someone else. Not me.
You? Why would I be looking for you?
This is the second time we've met, isn't it? I couldn't forget your beautiful face.
Shaltyr's hand moved to touch her mask.
Perhaps you have the wrong girl.
For a split second, Brain was stunned. Maybe he was mistaking her. But he immediately discarded that idea. It definitely wasn't someone else. He couldn't be sure of the voice, since it was coming from behind the mask, and he didn't have a perfect ear. But there was only one Shaltyr Bloodfallen in this world, and there was no way Brain could mistake her.
It's just that thing where it's hard to remember someone so insignificant.
If she wasn't being sarcastic and really didn't remember him, it had to mean that she just hadn't taken very much interest in him. From someone as dominant as Shaltyr, that was neither arrogance nor hubris.
Ah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. This is our first time meeting.
Oh, well, if you come around, that's fine with me. But maybe I should kill you. Do you want to die or live? If you bow down to the ground and lick my shoes, it might improve my mood.
Sorry, not interested.
Brain exhaled slowly and lowered his hips, assuming a position from which he could draw his sword. The martial art he activated was, naturally, domain. Of course, he knew it wouldn't work on her. Shaltyr sighed with annoyance and lightly scratched her head.
What a pain that you can't see the difference between our abilities.
No, I'm well aware of it.
Brain answered Shaltyr's grumble to herself in his head as he watched her. He was so aware of how terrible she was, it made him sick.
So why aren't I running away?
Brain wondered, and the corners of his lips curled up. Not a single ripple appeared on the lake of his heart, even before such a horrible being, from whom he fled, abandoning everything. It remained surprisingly tranquil. Shaltyr approached him casually. Her movements were exactly the same as last time. In that case, he was sure to meet crushing defeat. Everything he'd spent his life doing would be shattered for kicks.
I guess that's how it goes.
Brain was terrified. Maybe it was pathetic. He had been in plenty of life-or-death duels before. But he couldn't lie. He was scared. His opponent was an overwhelmingly powerful being who could easily take his life. If his battles up till now had been life or death, this would be leaping off a sheer cliff. He may have been prepared for death in battle, but he wasn't prepared for suicide. Strangely, however, the stabbing feeling in his chest, the desire to run away at full speed that he'd had since arriving in the capital, was gone. Suddenly, he remembered a view of a young man's back. That boy was so much younger than himself. Though trembling, he had stood with all his might against an overwhelming surge of murderous intent. Brain smiled, a melancholy smile. That old man had said that sometimes humans could unlock unbelievable levels of power. But Brain felt it was probably impossible for himself. He couldn't muster all his strength in service of the princess like Climb, and he couldn't devote himself to the people and the king like Gazif. People capable of those feats were fundamentally different from Brain. He was a selfish person who'd lived his life thinking only of himself.
But would buying time for Climb cancel that out?
One step, and then another. Shaltyr, with her left pinky finger raised, closed in at a bizarrely slow pace. Was his extreme focus making time decelerate for him? Or had Shaltyr deliberately slowed her steps to tease him? Brain felt that either possibility was equally likely, and grinned.
That's what she's like.
His encounter with her had lasted only a few short minutes, but he had the feeling he understood her personality better than that of any other woman he'd ever known.
2 more steps, I guess. Until the end of my days with the sword.
He had fled, But he hadn't let go of his weapon. He lived his life alongside his sword, so it was probably right to die alongside it. He made up his mind. It was as though Brain had revealed himself to her in order to reach this decision.
Wielding this sword is my life, huh?
With those words, he decided to forget everything. His opponent was a being of distant heights. He couldn't afford to waste his energy on pointless thoughts any longer. He unleashed Divine Strike, a martial art that was impossible to perceive. But even using Domain and Divine Strike at the same time, he couldn't reach the monster before his eyes. The attack was still so slow. She could catch his sword by the ridge on the flat of the blade with no trouble. So that was why he used one more martial art. He saw the face of Gazif Stronov in his mind. If he hadn't met him in the capital, even if he had made it to this point, he definitely wouldn't have thought to use it. But all the people he'd met here changed his mind. Brain was grateful to the man who was once his greatest enemy, someone to overcome, and was now his rival. He accepted the reality that he might die here.
It's belated, but thanks, my friend and rival.
The thought alone lightened Brain's mood. Now, he could let everything go. No more hesitating. The humiliation he once felt was gone.
Ah!
Brain's lips parted, and he bellowed with the scream of a were-thrush. It was a war cry that contained all his strength, poured out from the bottom of his soul. He unleashed an ultra-fast Divine Strike against the opponent he sensed with Domain. But that wasn't all. Divine Strike wasn't speeding up a single swipe of a sword. The attack was 4 simultaneous slashes. During the battle where Brain Unglaus had first learned defeat, Gazif Stronov had used this very martial art. Brain had admired him and practiced the move over and over, all the while lying to himself, saying he was doing it to know his enemy. Then, in suffering, he forbid himself to use it. But now, at this moment, all of Brain's shackles had come off, and he used it without hesitation.
Fourfold slash of light!
Actually, Fourfold Slash of Light had a major weakness. Unleashing 4 strikes at once was a burden too great for the user's body to bear, so the attacks would go all over the place. Due to the move's low chances of hitting its target, even its inventor, Gazif, ended up reserving it for use against multiple enemies, when he was surrounded, for instance. Fourfold Slash of Light had fewer strokes than Sixfold Slash of Light, so it was somehow manageable to direct all of them at one opponent, but landing all of them was still a rare feat. There was no way such a haphazard attack would hit Shaltir Bloodfallen. Brain was well aware of that. But there was a move Gazif Stronov didn't possess that Brain did, and it supported his accuracy within its range to an astonishing degree. Domain. The 4 errant slashes were redirected with the help of Domain's superhuman precision targeting, and the blades traveled the arcs Brain saw in his mind. 4 simultaneous, ultra-fast slashes that would absolutely hit their target. This blow would be difficult even for vaunted heroes, humans who had surpassed human capability, to block. It would be nearly impossible to block all 4 slashes with the physical abilities of a member of the human race. It was an attack that was truly beyond human. But Shaltir Bloodfallen stood in the uppermost heights of ability, where no one could surpass her. From the point of view of someone like that, those 4 divinely fast attacks might as well have been moving at a snail's pace. She scoffed, and her left hand blurred, moving even faster. A hard sound like the clang of metal rang through the air. The 4 attacks and blocks had happened so fast that the sounds became one. So, in other words, Shaltir blocked all 4 slashes, and not a single blade reached her. She shrugged. She laughed under her mask to think that she had wasted time going along with this child's play, Not at the warrior in front of her, but at herself for being so foolish as to entertain it for even a minute. But the next moment, her eyes widened slightly. If someone who could numerically compare the pair's abilities were present, they would have given Brain thunderous applause. They would have applauded him with the shock and respect afforded to one who caused the sun to rise in the west. Yes, such was Brain's miracle.
Huh?
Shaltir was looking at the nail of her left pinky finger. It was damaged. Part of it was missing. Less than 1/3 of an inch. But still. Shaltir thought back over their exchange. Her nail had been severed at exactly the part she'd been using to block the slashes. As she recalled, the 4 slashes had come 2 from above and 2 from below, precisely sandwiching the spot she was using to block.
You did that on purpose?
The man before her suddenly started to laugh. Shaltir wondered if he'd gone insane, but then thought twice and decided it was something else.
He must be laughing at the fact that he cut off my fingernail.
But she didn't understand.
So he cut off my fingernail. What's the big deal?
Shaltir's fingernails and fangs were treated as natural weapons. As such, they could be broken with weapon-breaking skills, since they would grow back as life force was recovered with healing magic. They broke more easily than other weapons at the same level. They weren't so great. They couldn't even compare with her magic item, the pipette lance. So she had no idea why this guy had burst out laughing.
You cut my pinky fingernail a little bit. So what? What does it matter?
She looked at the other 4 nails in her left hand. Even her pinky finger was still long enough to rip easily into human flesh, despite being shorter.
It seems you passed as a nail clipper.
The man opened his eyes wide with ever-increasing jubilance.
Thank you for complimenting me. My sword, my life, hasn't been in vain. I reached, just barely, that infinitely tall peak.
I'm not complimenting you.
She'd meant it sarcastically. But his reply seemed to be genuine, meaning this man was delighted to be called a nail clipper.
Does this guy have a screw loose?
When she thought about it, he had been saying weird things ever since they met.
Anyhow, he's creepy. So I'll kill him and get it over with.
Having decided that, she was about to charge. When she received word from Demiurge that he'd started the battle. She knew what that meant. She looked over without thinking, but she couldn't sense the presence she was looking for.
Because of his ring?
One of the rings their master wore had the power to hide him completely from detection abilities. The Guardians had all been given one as well, but this ring was powerful enough to erase even the presence of the ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Frustrated that she couldn't sense her master, she faced forward again, but the mentally disturbed man who was standing there was gone.
I forgot about the weirdo.
When she glanced around, she saw him watching her as he jumped down to street level. He'd run to the edge of the roof while she was distracted.
Surely there's no way a weak human like you can escape me. If I use a spell to slow down time, I can catch up before he hits the ground.
She made a prompt judgment and cast a spell.
Time accelerator!
As the world turned viscous, Shaltir moved to the spot the man had jumped from. When she looked down, she saw a slowly descending human. While this spell was active, it wasn't possible to harm anyone. But one could, for example, get down to the street first and ambush them.
That'll be good. Since I'll be down there anyway, I'll open up my arms and catch him. Being embraced by a voluptuous beauty like me should make that human happy.
Smiling as she imagined his expression, she moved to descend before her spell ran out. That was when she realized there was more than one human.
Who are they?
It was someone in white full plate armor and a man who seemed like a thief. Brain landed on the street and looked up. Shaltir wasn't there.
She's not chasing me. Or is she giving herself a handicap like she did last time?
He hadn't run because he believed he could get away. He just thought he could buy more time for Climb and the thief, as they escaped if he was down low rather than up high. Everything he was doing was so those two could escape. That was why he'd begun this chase. But just as he was about to start running, he saw something he couldn't believe. Climb and the thief were there, weaving him over.
What the?
He felt like his head was going to start steaming, mostly from anger and panic. With a desperate expression, Brain went to them as fast as he could and, grabbing them by the scruff of their necks, set off running. It would have been much faster to run normally, but Brain was too out of sorts to realize that. He ran as best as he could, turning around again and again to make sure Shaltir wasn't chasing them, and then slammed Climb against a wall. He hadn't controlled his strength well, so Climb bounced off and sunk to the ground.
Why? Why didn't you go?
His emotion was violent, but he mobilized what little reason he had in order to not yell. Well, because... He grabbed Climb as he was staggering to his feet.
Because what? Huh? Are you gonna tell me you were worried or something? I told you to go! Wait! I don't know what happened back there, but you didn't explain yourself well enough. This isn't only Climb's fault.
Hearing the thief's remarks, Brain began to regain his composure. The thief was right. He hadn't said enough. He breathed deeply in and out.
Sorry, Climb. I guess I went a little nuts there.
Oh, no, I'm the one who should be apologizing. I shouldn't have disregarded what you said.
No, this was my fault. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have lost my temper. Hey, Mr. Nglaus. What the hell happened? We haven't known each other long, but that wasn't you just now. You were acting like... I'm not sure how to put this, but like a rookie who just picked up a sword. It's too dangerous to stop here. Let's talk on the move. For now, I'll say that I found a monster as strong as Sebas.
The three of them walked with caution. It was only luck that Brain hadn't run into one of Yaldabaoth's subordinates when he'd fled haphazardly. If they expected to continue to have that kind of luck, they'd be in for trouble.
But you're unharmed, so... Did you win by a landslide, or did you settle things by negotiating? No, I used my katana and... Yes, I cut her fingernail.
The moment he put it into words, he was filled with an impossible amount of joy.
Yes, I cut the fingernail of that absolute monster, Shaltir Bloodfallen. I cut her fingernail!
Brain repeated. He nearly lost himself in the glee welling up from the bottom of his heart, and had to hold it back. Still, he couldn't keep his voice from shaking with emotion.
I see. You cut her fingernail. Well, you did do it with a katana, so that is pretty awesome.
The shaken thief's voice also trembled. You cut the fingernail of someone as strong as Sir Sebas, huh? So yeah, that is pretty awesome. I think.
Yeah. Wouldn't expect less from Brain Nglaus.
Brain desperately held back a goofy grin as he bathed in their praise. Then he shook his head to clear away the emotions.
Climb, I won't treat you like a kid anymore. You get it because you've seen Sir Sebas, right? There are plenty of guys stronger than me. Momon from Raven Black is probably in the same realm as Sir Sebas. That's why I want you to remember this. When I say run, you run. If you stay, you'll only be in the way. Promise you'll follow my orders without question.
Understood.
Okay then. You work for the princess, right? That's why you were able to withstand Sebas's murderous aura. So don't mix up your priorities.
Brain patted Climb on the shoulder and cast his eyes back in the direction he ran from.
Why isn't she coming after me? There must be some reason. I don't even know why she was here. Don't tell me she's here for something in the warehouse district.
Then he remembered what Renaer had said.
Could she be looking for the same item as Yaldabaoth? That would mean he's working for her.
If a monster as ultra-powerful as Shaltir was here, the correct course of action was to give up on their objective and run away. But could he convince Climb of that? Climb had just agreed to follow his orders, so if he said to retreat, Climb would probably comply.
Is that a good thing?
It wasn't wrong to run, if you wanted to keep Climb alive. But there are times a person has to choose to stand for something more important than their life. Climb was already under orders from Renaer to basically die, so maybe this was one of those times? He didn't know exactly how the boy Climb, just Climb, had lived or why he devoted himself to the Golden Princess. Still, he didn't feel it would be right for an outsider to change his will to follow Princess Renaer's orders. Bring grabbed the thief and asked, taking care that Climb couldn't hear.
Hey, is it okay to take Climb with us any farther? I wonder if it wouldn't be better for him to return safely, even if he can't fulfill his mission. You're a nice guy. Cut the pointless brown-nosing. And I think you're the nice guy, volunteering for this super dangerous job.
The thief grinned, blushing, and glanced at the boy who seemed curious as to what they were talking about.
I guess, how do I put this? This kid giving is all reminds me of my lost past. In other words, I've grown fond of him during the short time we've been together. Anyhow, I think I have a general understanding of what you're thinking. You're not wrong. But
the thief's eyes gleamed with a piercing strength.
This is how he's chosen to live. Someone else shouldn't distort that.
Brain's breath caught.
I like that kid. Maybe it's because we survived a deadly battle together, but when I look into his eyes, I can pretty much read his feelings for the princess. He's unbelievable. He's got a reckless, ridiculous wish. That's exactly why, as a thief, I want to let him aim for the most valuable treasure in the kingdom. Yeah, he might die, but he decided it himself.
Brain's resolve solidified.
Then, let's hurry on. There's no telling when Shaltir will come after us.